What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 106 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk to you about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And today's episode is brought to you by IQ Power Tools. Go check out their lineup of power tools with integrated dust collection systems at www.iqpowertools.com. And today we're joined by Isabel Perez. She is the product manager, subgrade improvement at Terrafix Geosynthetics. And she's here today to talk to us about everything geotextiles for our hardscape industry, choosing the right geotextile for the job, installation methods, techniques, and everything that you'd want to know. So let's jump into it. Today, we're joined by Isabel Perez. She is the product manager, subgrade improvement at Terrafix Geosynthetics. And she's here today to talk to us about everything geotextiles in the hardscape industry. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about this. We haven't had somebody on the show to talk geotextiles for our industry, so this is going to be a great conversation. But I want to get started to get to know a little bit more about yourself, how you got into this industry, what brought you to Terrafix. Can you give our audience a little bit of context there?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit an international person, let's say that. I born in Venezuela, in Latin America, and I'm an industrial engineer. But since 2006, I work as a civil engineer. So my area of expertise is foundations and ground applications. I moved to Spain to do to approach my MBA, and since then I moved to Canada in 2014. So kind of all my experience and kind of the type of the application that approach has fits perfectly with this position of Terrafix, where I can add value to my customers, even from engineering all the way to construction. So it has been, I have been involved in so many projects and applications where we address a lot of issues, and at the end of the day, we help to save a lot of money, or at the end of the day, solve issues that comes along in every single project.
Absolutely. And speaking of Terrafix, can you get into a little bit about what the company does, what solutions they offer to customers, and anything that you want to speak on about Terrafix?
Yes, so we are here since 1973, and actually is Terrafix made by an engineering team. We are very technical into some applications. The most important sectors that we cover is MSC walls and structures, ground improvement, with the use of the GeoGrid. We also cover stormwater management system and erosion and sediment control applications, plus geosynthetic clay liners. So within those topics, Terrafix has been leader in the market, and also provide all way through stamp designs and also a assistance during construction. So we are very handy in the sense that we're very accessible, not just to engineers or designers, but also to end users and contractors to help them achieve the goal.
In our industry, geotextiles have really been embraced in the recent years. I started working for a supply yard back in 2007, and we were selling the woven and non-woven geotextiles, but they weren't really being embraced by contractors. In recent years, we've seen that shift, especially since I started my own business. So I wanted to talk more about this, the benefits that geotextiles offer us as contractors, and ultimately homeowners that we're doing the projects for. So let's get started with geotextiles. How are they made?
Yes. So as you mentioned, since 2007, everything has shifted, and even after the pandemic, people realizes that they need to do things differently. But since you start the topic, the two main type of geotextiles are woven and non-woven. In the case of non-woven, is mostly a polypropylene fibers. Those fibers are randomly connected through a network and provide some stability. In the case of the woven, which is the polypropylene filaments, is connected to a network that provides or enhance that relative position and certainly more strength than the non-woven. So there are a lot of not just miscommunication, but kind of unknowns between the two of them, and how you can approach each one in the case you need to do some or enhance some separations, filtration, drainage, reinforcement. So what we need to understand is how it's made for and what you want to address, or what is the type of your problem, and then therefore um, understand which product will be more suitable. Actually, those are the two main geotextiles, but we have been, or there is an evolution from the geotextile as well. So for the case of the woven, I'm going to talk later on, but I just want to give you a brief introduction. There are also high strength geotextiles, which is again type of woven, the plastic one, which is the polypropylene filaments. And that also enhance what is the principal advantage of the woven, which is the tensile of strength. So it goes above and beyond for the regular non-woven can afford to, or can offer into the job site. The other type is a kind of a geocomposite product, so has the two of them. So has the non-woven and the woven kind of together. So has the very high tensile strength, which is made by the woven polypropylene filament, but also has some fibers, which is the type of the non-woven one. So at the end of the day, what it allows you is to use both benefits, or to have at place the two components where you can take advantage of the two of them.
Gotcha. So getting into the different types and the woven, the non-woven, are there different tensile strengths and different strengths between even different fabrics in non-woven, and how would we as contractors know which one suits our installation best?
Yes, so that's a really good question, and that's kind of a concern that I have all the time. So as I mentioned before, the non-woven is made by polypropylene fibers. So those fibers are very small components that are connected together within a network. So the fibers itself, when you touch, when you have kind of the physical connection with them, is kind of a fabric. So that fabric doesn't have any tensile of strength as supporting the structure. The fabric, it will enhance and kind of provide that filtration, drainage, and separation factor into your structure. So the fabric, rather than providing strength, is mostly enhancing separation, filtration, and drainage. And sometimes well, most of the applications like rip wraps, sub drains, trench drains, foundations, and why it's used, because we really need to avoid any pumping or contamination from the subgrade contaminants to the base course, or we really need to enhance filtration and drainage for your specific application. That's why we use the non-woven portion. When we really need to provide reinforcement, low distribution, stabilization, then we may be looking for the woven, because it's the product that enhances the tensile strength. And that's kind of the main benefit of wovens.
Getting into, say, whether we're using woven or non-woven on a job site, where we are lots of clay in the ground, and say we're doing a patio for a customer, and we're hitting that clay subsoil, does that affect whether we use the woven or the non-woven and what benefits we're looking for?
Yes, for sure. So the first step will be an assessment, or just by talking with the owner or the contractor, is what problem are you facing. So sometimes, even though you have some soils, you may need the non-woven really will enhance that separation, filtration, and drainage. But if you are dealing with soft soil, you also need to solve or need to improve that reinforcement into the structure. So then also the non-woven is a good idea to use. So when you don't have enough water, or when you don't have a lot of water contact, or when you are not dealing with that muddy areas, kind of swamp kind of thing, woven can be a good product to use, because even though the aperture size, it will stick and allow the structure. But when when the drainage and filtration factor is something that is a priority, then the woven won't be enough. So you really need to look into the non-woven portion. That's why when even from the applications that I mentioned, like for foundation drains, sub drains, even rip wraps. So when you're dealing with rip wraps, the primary thing, since you're putting a big size of a stone on top, the main mechanism that you really need to enhance here is the woven with the filtration, drainage, and separation. So you really need to keep that material clean. And that's when you want to keep the material clean from your base course, the product that can provide you that is the non-woven. When you need any reinforcement, so the ground is okay, but I still need some a retention and reinforcement into my structure, the kind of the product that will be more adequate, it will be the woven.
Does it play into factor if we're doing a patio versus a driveway, where a driveway will get larger vehicles, larger weight load, and more traffic on it, as opposed to, say, a backyard patio? Does that play into our decision at all in terms of which one we're going to use?
Yes. So, and even between the two segments, wovens and non-wovens versus the different type of wovens, as I mentioned, what is critical here is to know what type of soils are you dealing with. So it's not the same type of remediation or approach if you are building on top of a swamp or a pit. So if you have a farm and it's in the middle of a spring or fall where you have a lot of water, you have to deal with that, versus you're doing just a patio. Different applications on different type of soils for sure will influence in the decision, but also what is the type of your application? You want a permanent application or just want a temporary application because you're building your highway and then you're planning to rebuild within the 5 years kind of thing. So it also will depend the lifetime of the application, or how long do you think that it's going to last. And the other thing is the load. For example, a driveway, as I mentioned, versus a highway versus a patio. So what type of loads that structure is going to be exposed into? Static loads, dynamic loads, heavy loads, light duty ones. So there are certain characteristics that we need to understand prior proposing a solution. So in the case of the woven, for example, a regular 200W, 400W tensile strength, around 1,000 newtons can be okay for a driveway or a patio. But if you're talking mostly for example, heavy duty parking lot or a highway, then you may be looking about high strength geotextile, where the tensile strength go from 1,000 Newton versus 70 kilonewtons per meter. So the jump is significantly. So then that's why there are different products aimed or designed for different applications and conditions.
What about for a retaining wall installation? Is there specific non-woven or woven that you would suggest for that? Does that also depend on the subsoil and drainage as well?
So for retaining walls, we mostly see the type of non-woven, which is for drainage and filtration. The woven, it won't be as adequate because, as I mentioned, the main mechanism will be the tensile strength. However, there are other products like geogrids, in the specific case of uniaxial geogrid. So you cannot compare apples to apples for a regular woven 1,000 Newton, as I mentioned, the tensile strength versus a uniaxial geogrid for 70 or 100 kilonewtons per meter tensile strength. So since it's a critical application, and even though we're maybe talking about 3 feet retaining walls, so not a super big one, you still need some to retain the soil, and maybe a woven may not be enough or may not provide enough strength for that specific application. But for sure, a non-woven is clearly important because you need to allow and to be able to get the water out of the structure as soon as possible. So a non-woven for sure will be suitable. Even though for retaining walls, doesn't matter kind of the height, but there are also some considerations and also how you as an end customer and as a contractor feel more comfortable with. So sometimes you may think that a light strength or light component non-woven may work, or for safety, you want to just bump a little bit your criteria and have a better product that can provide you even more benefits in the long term.
And then what about the, say, installation methods of these? When it comes to installing a patio, a driveway, what do you look for in terms of proper installation of geotextiles?
Yes, so that's also a very good question because most of the times we do very good things from design, but also we need to watch out the whole process. And when it comes to installation, what is important here is that the ground or the soil should be level. In ideal scenario, it should be level because you want to avoid the shingles and you want to avoid any disruption on the functions of the product. But the other kind of consideration or important consideration that you need to take into account is the overlap. So the material has to be connected. If you don't provide an appropriate overlap, and I will provide you the more insights about the criteria or overlapping criteria, is if you don't have that aspect to cover, you may have some contaminations, you may have some disruptions, you may have some deflections that at the end of the day, it will appear on the surface. So you may see some failures if you don't follow the installation guidelines as they used to. And the main criteria for that installation or that overlap requirement will be the existing soils. The worse the soil, and generally speaking, worse means muddy, means that is very hard to deal with in terms of that the kind of the bearing capacity or the strength is not enough, it's not good. So you may be then sinking on the ground. So the worse, the more overlap you have to do. And why? Because not just of safety factor, but because of we need to ensure that the system works as a system. So all the components should be connected. The okay or a standard type of surface you have, then the minimum requirement will be 1 foot or 30 centimeters. The worst, even we can standardize up to 1 meter or 3 feet.
I want to take a moment from today's episode to thank our sponsor, IQ Power Tools. They began by building tools to solve its own job site dust problems. Fast forward to today, the company continues to combine intensive research and industry knowledge with a completely updated approach. The result? Innovative tools that eliminate dust and water while creating a more efficient workforce. IQ Power Tools envisions a future where their innovation helps create a 100% dust-free environment. Job sites are safer, work practices are healthier, and the construction industry becomes even more sustainable. Their national War on Dust tour begins this summer. Visit www.iqpowertools.com to see when they'll be in your neighborhood. Now back to our episode. I'm going to try to frame this question because I can see it visually in my head, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain it so well. If we're installing, say, a patio, is it best to lay out the geotextile from side to side to cover that area and then overlap the next area, as opposed to, say, running up the middle of the patio in order to cover an area? So is it better to cover side to side with the patio, or is it better to go up the middle and to get that overlap? Does that matter as much, or is it best to have that strength going side to side?
In ideal scenario, the strength should be, or kind of the higher strength, depends on the product you're planning to use. Their strength should be on kind of the main traffic area. So, for example, if it's a patio, what kind of load? So, for example, a full static load. So, how is the direction? At the end of the day, for the type of product that we're talking here, which is doesn't make too much difference between if it's horizontal or vertical. What is important here is the structure has to be connected. Plus, there are also certain overlaps that has to go out of the structure if it's possible. For example, a driveway, if you're able to overlap the sides, will be ideal. And if it's a patio, also, if you are able to extend that overlap for some areas that also may be exposed or may have a connection with the patio, it also be a good way to do it. At the end of the day, we have different type of roll width. So depends also within your structure, if we're talking for highways or kind of a kind of wide size of applications. The idea is not just to overlap and make the system works, but also make your life easier as an end user, as a contractor. So depends on that. We have different type of width, and actually even within Terrafix, we also can custom make your product that you may not have to do any on-site cuttings or any adjustments. So
yeah, because I'm just trying to think, like, especially with a highway, if they don't have the specific width of that highway, they would be running up one side and running up another. But would it be make more sense to, you know, do that side to side and do multiple cuts to add that strength?
If you, it will be better to avoid the multiple cuts. And what we are seeing from our experience is, as I mentioned, everything has to be connected. And when you're seeing multiple cuts, there are some shifts that may occur within the installation, not for the product itself, but also the installation when the aggregate is just spreading by the equipments, like the pieces itself tends to move. So once when the pieces get into the product, I mean, you may have some interlock effect, but in ideal scenario, you should be avoiding so many cuttings. And not just because it can be tedious for your crew or the construction team, but it also can tend to failures. So the easier, the better. When we do highways, for example, 8 meters, we also have to consider that we just have to cover not just the highway itself. Even most of the team, from engineer to construction, allows an overlap of 30, 60 centimeters, depends, 2 feet, 3 feet each side. So at the end of the day, the roll comes in 4 meters. So even though 4 meters, and we may need to add a portion of an extra roll. So it will depend on the type of the construction, but the easier, the better. At the end of the day, the kind of the benefit is there. What we need to ensure is we're covering all the requirements, and we kind of start getting those benefits within our structure.
Is there anything that you see that are, say, common mistakes of installation of geotextiles that you'd want to kind of highlight in terms of making sure people are following the instructions correctly?
Yes, for sure. As I mentioned, there are a kind of a typical installation guidelines, and Terrafix is actually, I'm going to provide you some of our main charts that you can distribute it and promote it into your website. But also, we are here to support you, whether it's a small, medium, or large job. So if you have a question or if you don't feel we need a system from us, for sure, we can go to sites and help you to address all the issues. And the main ones, as I mentioned, the structure should be, or the surface should be level. In that sense, you are avoiding any possible let's say failure for that perspective. But also, if you are following the installation guidelines and overlapping requirements, you may not have an issue. I mean, Geotextile itself, as you mentioned, in 2007 has been here for more than 40 years. So we are not talking about a new product. However, I mean, since then, we have been experiencing new products that are more adequate for certain type of applications or critical applications that a regular product may not provide. But just for a driveway or a patio or light duty parking lot, those type of requirements, like keep your structure or your surface flat, uniform, level, plus add your product, just roll out the product and keep the required overlap. And also make sure, in the case of the woven or non-woven, don't drive direct into the product because you can damage the product. So we really need a certain amount of material to be able to drive on top. And the other thing is, because we're talking about construction traffic is very heavy and also can damage the product, we also require a certain speed into those equipment, because that speed can also be causing some problems into the product before even getting replaced. So.
And then, having said, my background in a supply yard, and contractors not quite implementing geotextiles into their installation. I'm sure there's still contractors today that aren't using it, especially in our industry. I've seen a lot on Instagram that have finally are implementing it in their installation. But what would you say to that contractor that still doesn't believe in it, that still doesn't think that it's worth the money to invest into it for a customer? What would you say to that person?
Yes, so actually, that is a very interesting question because, everybody needs to see the benefit. And when you're mentioning see the benefit, it's not just the performance, but also how much it's going to cost. What are the implications that that new element can bring into the structure? What else should I be worried about? And finally, like, not everybody is willing to outsource part of the responsibility. So what about if the product is not working, or who will be able to show me the right approach to use? So that's why we're here. It's free of charge for you, most of the service that we offer. As a product manager, I have certainly some design tools that can help every end user or customer, and also contractor, to have a estimate of savings. What we've seen even more important right now is that we have a lot of environmental constraints. So even being able to show you how much we can reduce for bringing new material, for a reducing amount of disposal of existing material that you need to adequate or go to the landfill. So by reducing a lot of money, not just for the product itself, but kind of the variable that are around, the product may be worth it to try. So we are here to support you from design stage all the way down to construction. And as I mentioned, I have design tools that can show side by side the whole cross section and how much it can be reduced without impacting or without it implying any performance of the structure. So you will still have the same outcome of your design, even though you may have a better performance. And when we talk about better performance, that also can be traduced in less maintenance, less rehabilitation, or a long-lasting structure, which, again, we are here for that. The other type of consideration that we have is right now, people are more open-minded. Even though you are a contractor, you need to ask for a permission or an approval. There are a lot of agents that have been used this product because, as I mentioned, has over 40 years in the market. So there are a lot of benefits, even from constructability perspective. So in the case of the woven, you will achieve separation instantly. And just to give you an example, some of the energy companies use this type of products because it helps them to address or be able to drive a heavy trucks, cranes, or heavy equipment, and then after all, reuse that material to another site. That's something that you cannot do without any geosynthetics. So that's type of the beauties. And even though for temporary applications where you may think that it's not worth it, we have been helping and assisting customers where they save up to 6 figures of money, just money. We also may need to include some timing and other type of cost savings there. But for sure, I think it's worth it to try and worth it to contact us. I'm here to help. We have been assisting applications since homeowners, parking lots, light duty parking lots, driveways, all the way to LRTs and highways with MTOs. So we are here to help.
Definitely. And I always say it's such an inexpensive product to install, and it's so easy to install, and it's a differentiating factor for that contractor that has embraced it as opposed to other contractors that haven't. And having said that, um, I've heard very simple terms being placed on woven and non-woven fabrics being installed in terms of their application in the past. I've heard, oh, use woven for driveways, use non-woven for patios and walkways, which obviously there's so many more different variables that you need to consider before kind of jumping to those conclusions. But would you be able to offer a simplistic approach in terms of a driveway with heavy clay soils, you should use this product. A driveway with heavy sandy soils, you should use this product. And patios, the same thing. Would you be able to kind of differentiate that for us?
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah, when we talk about even salty clay, saturated soils, and even contaminated soils, and again, depend on what other challenges you have, an ideal product for that type of scenarios for sure has to be the non-woven. You really need to, so just keep in mind that you have your existing soils, which you are not investing much, but you are going to invest into the base course. So in the base course where you can experience Bernard D type 2 or Bernard A, kind of the most expensive one, can vary from $18 to $22 per ton, then you need to keep that material clean. So we're talking about, for example, in the case of non-woven, we're talking about between 90 cents, $1 per meter product, but you're going to save money, or you're going to kind of understand that your base course will be clean, and you are going to get the benefits of your base course, which is the more strength or kind of the better a layer that you're going to build. So if you don't, if you say, you know what, I don't want, I'm not going to use any geosynthetics, that's good. But at some point, if that, you will have a intermixed layer between your existing soils and your base course. And that intermediate layer will take part of your base course. Means if you're saying, okay, I'm building this driveway with 8 inches of stone, and at the end of the day, within the lap of 1 or 2 years, sometimes we're seeing failures even within 1 year after construction, just 1 year, 4 seasons after construction. So it's really fast. So instead of having 8 inches of stone, you may have 4 or 6. So then you are not getting the performance of the 8. And that's something that you can avoid with the type of product. And as I mentioned, it's 90 cents, $1 per meter, the investment. So when you are doing a rehabilitation or a major reparation or reparation, you're gonna for sure spend way more than just by doing right from the beginning. And the same thing that we can do, or same example we can extrapolate with the woven portion. So if you really need that reinforcement, even if you are dealing with okay soils, but you have a certain sewers or certain utilities where you cannot go as deep, so you still need your 8 inch of material. Let's keep that sample for the 8 inch. You still need your 8 inch of material, but you just have 6 available. And then just by doing that extra excavation, it will cost you to go to a city and ask for a permission, ask for so many historical information about the utilities, which they may not have it available, or you may be stuck with that problem. By having a reinforced structure, you may be able to get the same performance and adjust that structure for the 6 inch rather than the 8 inch or 5 inch, whatever is the case. So there are certain also things that we can cover, or we can go around with the use of the geosynthetics without compromising, as I mentioned, the performance. And there are a couple of things that, as I mentioned, dealing with contaminated soils or having that burn utilities where you really need to work with whatever you have right now, it can save you a lot of money and a lot of headaches at the end of the day.
This has been a great episode. I really enjoyed getting into this and geosynthetics, how we can use them, or geotextiles, and how we can use them in our bases. Anything else that you want to highlight before we come to a close here in terms of geotextiles that you think we haven't covered yet?
Yes, well, I think with the new landfill regulation, where right now in 2021, you will experience a higher disposal fees, not just for contaminated materials, but just for materials itself, and actually how we want to be sustainable and how we want to kind of reuse or incorporate existing elements within our structure. Geosynthetics can really help you to build with confidence, with reliability, and provide you a lot of benefits. So, I mean, I think it's worth it to try it. And it's free of charge if you come to a professional company. In my opinion, or my best advice is to do your homework, to understand what is your problem and what you want to achieve. And based on that, choose or select the adequate product that will provide you the best performance or the best benefits. And that's why we're here to help. Um, Actually, we'll have an upcoming webinar, which I may just send you the link just in case your audience wanna have that access. But in my opinion, it's important because an engineer from Thunder Engineer, principal engineer in Oakville, he has been designing a CN rail yards in Brampton. So CN kind of very loads, containers, and rail applications. And what I like is he will also show his perspective and what he's seen in more than 30 years of experience is that people are kind of very conservative to use new technologies. And when they know how to use it, they stick with the first one. But they are kind of afraid of keep trying and keep innovating. So he will be speaking from his perspective and his experience. And what I like is we can have the discussion and understand and how important is to understand what you really need or what you have and how you can do it in the better way you can. So thank you again for this opportunity. I really enjoyed the conversation. I will provide you more information and also the link for the webinar invite. So
absolutely, and thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Can you let our audience know where they can learn more about Terrafix and these geotextiles if they want more information?
Yes, so well, you can actually search on my social media, LinkedIn. My name is Isabel Perez. We are on 455 Corner Avenue, very close to QEW and very close to Etobicoke, so in Toronto. But you can reach me also, iPerez@terrafixgeo.com, and we are here to help. Thank you again for the invite.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Visit us at howtohardscape.com for more information on this subject. Reach out to us on our social channels at howtohardscape on Instagram and Facebook to let us know what you want to learn more about on this podcast. Anything that you want to comment, suggest, or let us know about, reach out to us there. We'd love it if you checked out our sponsor, IQ Power Tools, at www.iqpowertools.com to check out their War on Dust tour and when they're going to be in your neighborhood next, as well as checking out their lineup of power tools integrated dust collection systems there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.